Hey everybody, it's Cahlen, and today I'm going to be answering the question, what are the benefits of fasting? So I got this question from a viewer, and fasting, in case you don't know, fasting is basically kind of like a starvation diet, or taking large periods of time where you don't eat food. And so there's different types. An intermittent fast would be a fasting diet where you don't eat during generally the early part of the day, and you start maybe in the afternoon, and there's a few hours during the evening or afternoon and evening where you will eat, but the rest of the day you're not eating things. And that has a lot of benefits by itself. And then there's other things where you actually take an entire day where you don't eat, or you take several days where you don't eat, and some people actually go as far as to not eat or drink either. So and people can take these to some serious extremes. If you check out Elamine, who I have a video about, you'll see what kind of extremes I'm talking about here. But so let's talk about some of the benefits. One of the benefits, which I think is most interesting, is that it increases the lifespan of animals in studies. So, for example, there was a study where they basically gave two different groups of rats. One group, they had as much food as they wanted, and they could just eat as much as they wanted. And then they had another group where they had as much as they wanted for one day, and then they had a day where there was no food, and they just repeated that. Every other day they could eat for the rest of their lives. So the animals who ate every other day lived 83 or 86 in the 80s, 80% longer, almost twice as long as the ones who are eating every day. So if you're someone who is eating every day 3 meals a day, and you have been your whole life, then you're not going to live as long as you could have. So another interesting benefit of fasting is that it seems to reduce tumor growth or cancer. So there's various studies on this as well. All of the things I'm going to talk about here are basically, well, I suppose not all the things. Elamine is not scientifically studied at this point. But these benefits, the next few benefits that I'm going to list. So the cancer stuff, basically, if they will give rats, they'll inject them with a cancer-inducing agent, which is unfortunate. It's not a very kind study to be doing, but the information is still valuable. And they found, I didn't have anything to do with that, that the animals who were on fasting diets, I think these animals were fasting 2 days every week. So every day, most of the days they'd be able to eat, but then every week they'd take 2 days off of eating. And these rats grew tumors much less readily. And there's other studies that actually can help reduce cancer in people who have cancer, maybe even can cure cancer in some circumstances. And there's a lot of theories about that, but I generally think that it's largely due because if you're fasting, your body's switching over to running on ketones, which come from fat, either fat that you eat or fat that's you're stored on your body. And cancer cells generally prefer the sugar. While many of your cells in your body can work on either ketones or glucose, cancer cells would really rather just run on the glucose and will not survive if they don't have that. So that's one theory. That's one of my theories about that, and I think that's it's probably substantiated to some degree, but I'm not sure of the actual studies on that. Another benefit is that it can help people, fasting can help people who have insulin issues. So people who maybe are starting to get insulin resistant or just want to avoid any type of diabetic situation in their life. Fasting is going to prevent you from getting there. And also if you are there, and even if you're in a really bad place, like you are running on 100% insulin, and you've overdone it, you've stressed out an organ, the pancreas, and so you've caused all kinds of problems, but the body can heal itself as long as it's still alive. And so you have to, if you do the fasting, you're basically allowing that process to happen, because you're giving the pancreas a break and you're allowing it to regenerate, and you're allowing the way that your cells react to insulin, you're allowing that to kind of normalize, because insulin resistance is due to kind of overstimulation. So if you remove that stimulation for a while, things can start to balance out again, and your body can figure out how to be normal. Another benefit is that it reduces inflammation in the body. Basically, system-wide, it reduces inflammation. And this is a really big deal and probably is why animals live longer when they're on fasting diets, because inflammation is generally the cause of pretty much all disease that we can get. Now, inflammation is a necessary process in our body which we use for various reasons, but chronic inflammation, especially localized to a single area for a long period of time, is what is going to cause disease, and depending on where that location is, it will be a different disease. So if you want to stay healthy, you need to keep your body from getting into a state of chronic inflammation anywhere. And fasting is a good way to do that. For those of you who are worried about your heart health, you're worried about your blood pressure and your cholesterol levels, there are also studies which have shown that fasting is going to help you with that type of stuff as well. So fasting also boosts your actual cognitive function. So there were some rat studies on this as well. Basically, the rats who had a fasting diet, they performed better on tests of their cognition. And really, this is something which I think is very apparent if you start to experiment yourself with fasting. I have personally noticed that in periods where I basically intermittent fast every single day, and when I do that, I have a very clear mind. I'm able to think. I don't feel, bogged down, and I have lots of energy. And so, for me, it's just really obvious. And then when I eat, especially if I eat a heavy meal, all that drops pretty quickly and pretty drastically, and very, very noticeably. So, and I think a lot of that has to do with you're basically taking energy in order to digest things. It takes a lot of energy. There's a lot going on there, and you're basically taking that energy away from other parts of your body, including your brain. And also, if you are fasting, you're more likely to be running on ketones, and I've personally found that running on ketones makes my thinking more clear and also more stable than like sugar. You might get a rush of but then you're going to drop down, and it's different when you're fasting, or if you're in ketosis, it's very stable and clean and crisp and clear. So there are also studies that show that fasting can be helpful in preventing and also kind of curing neurodegenerative disorders, so like Alzheimer's, dementia, Parkinson's, these types of things. Basically, I think, again, I have some theories about this. I mean, there are studies on it. You can go check those out. But basically, someone was telling me a story about how they would give basically something like bulletproof coffee, which is like a drink where it's basically coffee with butter and MCT oil, so that you basically instantly get ketones in your body, pretty much as quickly as you drink it. And he was giving this drink to a person with Alzheimer's, and this person, was basically non-functional. And then when they drank this, they became like a normal person for a short period of time until the ketones had been used up. So this is not just like over time being in ketosis from fasting is going to help you. It's kind of an instantaneous effect. So another big benefit that a lot of people will be interested in, not so much me because I have kind of the opposite problem, but basically fasting is really good for weight loss, and it's actually much better when you compare to, if you have a fasting diet compared to a reduced calorie diet where you are still eating pretty frequently but you're just reducing the total amount of calories. People lose way more weight on the fasting diet than on the limited restriction, limited calorie intake. So basically, again, this is my theory about how that's working, but when you are in ketosis, your body is switched over to a mode where it wants to burn fat, and it realizes that if you have a lot of fat on your body, then it's going to want to get energy from that. It's like, well, look, we have this new source of energy, and yeah, this person's eating a lot of fat, but even though they're eating a lot of calories in fat and staying in ketosis, we also can get even more energy just from the stores of the body. So even if you're eating the same amount of calories of a very high carb sugar diet or a high fat diet, you're going to gain weight in the high sugar, high carb, and in the high fat, you're going to lose weight. So It's basically a similar thing in the fasting because you're not even taking in the fat through food, and so your body's going to take more fat to get energy from your actual fat cells in your body, which will cause you to lose weight. And then the last benefit, which is scientifically proven or just demonstrated, is that it boosts HGH, so human growth hormone. And there's lots of benefits to human growth hormone. It's been a long time since I've looked into it, so I'd have to re-look into it to be able to tell you all those. But basically, it's going to help you with muscle growth, healing injury, and it has various other benefits. So there was a study on, I believe, on humans where the people who were on a 2-day fast diet, I think once a week, 2 days they would fast, something like that. They had, or maybe they just, all they did was they went on, they just didn't eat for 2 days. They just did it once. And then they measured their HGH levels at the end. And it boosted their HGH by 5 times. 5 times. 2-day fast. So that's pretty fascinating, pretty interesting. And I think also, along with the anti-inflammation aspect, and then the increased human growth hormone, I think it makes sense that this would cause you to live a longer life. So those are the benefits that I'm aware of fasting. I have greatly benefited from fasting, and I'm continuing to explore that even deeper, adding like full day fast. I'm trying to get to 1 day a week. That's basically where I'm trying to get to. But then longer term, I would like to be able to do many, many days at a time. But if you're new to this, I think you shouldn't just jump straight into this stuff, because your body has to get used to it. Your body has to learn how to get energy from other sources. Also, if you're going to be losing a lot of weight, you have to keep in mind that your body stores toxins in your fat. That's part of the reason why people get fat, because the body's trying to get the toxins out of the bloodstream. And the fat-soluble toxins, it will push off and create fat cells to kind of sequester them away from the bloodstream. So anyways, you have to be careful if you're losing weight too quickly, if you have had a kind of a toxic lifestyle, because you can hurt yourself by releasing those too quickly into your body. So you don't want to go too fast with the fasting. I would say, if you are just brand new, I'd say get into something like the Bulletproof diet, which is basically, it's an intermittent fast, except that you are drinking bulletproof coffee, or basically a fat-infused hot drink that's blended with MCT oils. So you can do green tea. I used to do basically hot chocolate. I actually don't do a morning drink anymore. I'm now on like a pure intermittent fast type thing. But it is what I did that for actually a couple of years, and it was hugely beneficial, and it got me to the point where I can now do an intermittent fast where I only basically eat 1 meal a day, and then I'm not even taking in any energy through food the rest of the day. And once you've gotten kind of used to that, then you can start adding in 1 day fasts. And that's kind of where I am. And then sky's the limit if you believe what Elatom Elamine is saying, and I do believe him. Basically, it does seem to be possible to live entirely off of energy sources other than food. So I recommend checking out his work. I think it is pretty fascinating. It has some pretty amazing possibilities for humanity if it was something we actually were able to study and embrace as a society. Just think of all the problems we would solve if we didn't need to eat very much. So anyways, that's my rundown on fasting. Hope it was helpful to you, and thanks for watching, and I'll see you next time. If you enjoyed this video, I hope you'll share it with someone that you care about. It helps them, it helps me, and it'll help you feel like a healthy type of person. If you're feeling extra generous, you can head on over to cahlen.org/gift, and there you can basically learn of ways to help me feed myself, shelter myself, and to upgrade and repair my gear. All donations give you the option of having a 1-hour life coaching call with me. So, thanks again for watching.